Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the challenges of free offenders, challenges of ex-offenders, re-entering the free world. And of course we have here to talk about some of the problems that individuals who have been incarcerated face once they are paroled for whatever reason, having an opportunity to come back into society, is Reverend Pastor KWalker. Reverend Walker is the founder of the organization, the Hands of God Ministry. And of course, Reverend Walker, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Dr. Haney. It's a pleasure to be here again, talking to you once again about some things I consider to be very important.
Well, I tell you, I believe, Reverend Walker, that about the best information that we have dealing with incarceration and et cetera will come from you, because you've given us so much information and in a real sense have enlightened us about a lot of things that are going on and have gone on in the system of incarceration. Let's have you, Pastor Walker, to start us off today by talking about your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in your life, and then we'll talk about some of the problems and some of the challenges that people who have been incarcerated face once they attempt to come back into society.
Okay. Well, I was born here in Nashville, Tennessee, born of two good, hard-working parents. One of my father's now deceased, and I was educated in the public school system of Tennessee. Did not graduate from high school, actually ended up going into the Navy, coming out of the Navy, got a GED through OIC, spent a little time in, at Tennessee State University, of course, didn't graduate from there either. Ended up incarcerated in the prison system, did a little college in prison as well, but basically, and never got a degree in anything, but that brings me, you know, to where I am today. All of those life experiences have led me to where I am right now in life today. I am currently the founder and the president, CEO, pastor, senior servant of the Hands of God Ministries, which consists of the Hands of God Christian Church and the Hands of God Recovery Ministries, and we're located in East Nashville on Woodland Street. We have 5 houses, recovery houses, and our primary purpose is to assist people who are basically down on their luck, people that are on drugs and alcohol, people that the society is looked down upon as being rejects, ever say, and especially those coming out of the prison system. This is what we're doing.
You know, when you talk about re-entry, you've got 5 houses, and I would imagine that most of them deal with individuals who have been incarcerated and have come out. And so you've got quite a bit of experience dealing with this whole issue, or what you consider to be the challenges of coming back into society. If you had, excuse me, to explain to our audience this morning some of these challenges, what would you say would probably be the greatest challenge that individuals who've been incarcerated have to face?
The biggest issue that I'm dealing with right now with people coming out of the system would be the fact that they're coming out without any kind of identification. That's one of the big issues right now, because you take an individual that's been paroled and then they come back into society, then they come in with no identification, and now technically if a law enforcement officer stop one of these individuals and they find out that they don't have an identification, they can hold them in jail for 72 hours. Now, technically, that would be a violation because it's an arrest, and they could very well end back up in the system. But it's amazing to me, Dr. Haney, how that the state, you can be in state custody, but yet you can't leave state custody with a state identification card. Now, let me add this, though, that I have met with the Assistant Commissioner of Rehabilitative Services, and they are working to solve that problem right now. So hopefully that's going to be a non-issue after a while. But right now it's a very big issue.
And it seems to be a very, very important issue, because it seems that the state of Tennessee ought to be able to recognize individuals who are going back and recognize the importance. And when you talk about identifications, you're talking about driver's license?
Well, not necessarily the driver's license, but the if they have driver's license, of course they can have, you know, the renewal process while they're incarcerated, but mainly the photo ID. If they can get the photo ID, which is basically a sheet of paper that's saying, okay, this guy's been in here, or this woman's been in here for the last 10, 15, 20 years, we know who they are. Take this piece of paper, go down to the highway patrol officer, wherever you get the license or the ID, and say, this is the document that identifies me as this person right here. And then should be able to get the, get it from there with no cost to the state. I'm not saying the state needs to pay for it. Would be ideal if they did, but if they don't want to do that, then at least give them something that says I can get my ID for the $8 or the $12 that would have cost to get it.
And of course, we're getting ready for our first break here, Pastor Walker. But it does seem to me that this ought to be a non-issue, you see, because these individuals have been incarcerated, and now they are out, and the state ought to recognize that they have to be identified, and they ought to be willing to supply that identification. And of course, we'll be back following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. The issue or the topic is the challenges of ex-offenders re-entering free world or free society. And of course, we have to talk about these challenges. The founder of the Hands of God Christian Ministry, Reverend Pastor KWalker. And of course, Reverend Walker, let me again give you an opportunity to talk about some of the other challenges. I think you've identified the inability of individuals being incarcerated when they leave the system to have some kind of adequate identification. So let's talk about whatever else you have to say in reference to that, as well as other challenges. Okay,
well, here's what it leads to. Here's where the frustration really comes in. A guy comes out of the prison system. He doesn't have any identification. Okay, now chances are he don't have any clothing or anything like that. Now, places like Salvation Army and some other places may give you a clothing voucher. But if you can't identify yourself, they won't give it to you. Some of the Second Harvest Food Bank satellite location will give you a box of food. But if you can't identify yourself, then you can't get it. So now you're frustrated. You get out, you can't get any clothes, you can't get any food, and we bring them into our program. We have a structured ministry program that they come out into our program. They're mandated by the parole system that they stay there a minimum of 90 days, and we try to help them to get back into the flow. So if you don't have clothes to wear, you don't have food to eat, and then if you don't have ID, then you can't meet the requirements of the INS form you have to fill out in order for you to be hired on a job. So now you're frustrated. You can't have any clothes. You can't get any food, and then you can't get a job. And at the same time, at some point, our first weekend is at no cost, but at some point, then your program fees start to build. Now you're in a situation where I got to try to get my identification, then I've got to get a job, then I got to wait to get paid. Now I got the frustration of knowing I've got a debt already on me when I get out. So now I'm frustrated. And a lot of people will revert back if you don't have that structure for them to help them to keep pushing forward in that situation.
Well, and again, I guess the only thing I can say about that is that it's just curious and it's strange that as interested as the state ought to be that every individual have some kind of identification.
Absolutely.
To allow these individuals to have, I think that's probably an oversight on the part of many people.
Well, I guess, Dr. Haney,
because there's no rationale,
no,
and it's hard to find a motive for it.
Right, because you can walk around the prison system for 5, 10, 15, 20 years with identification, and then the day you come out the door, they take the ID from you. It's kind of like, okay, nobody needs to know who you are when you come out, but we need to know who you are while you're in here. Okay. And it just don't make sense. And there's a lot of issues, that comes just as a result of that one particular issue.
Of identification.
Because I deal with these guys all the time, and they come into our program, and you want to try to help them get on their feet. You want to get them involved in some program, help them restructure their life. And people need to understand that people go in the prison system. Now, everybody that goes in and comes out, they have not had any part of anything taking place in their life in terms of becoming a better person or being rehabilitated, I should say. But then you got those individuals that really want to change their lives. But then if you create frustration for them coming out the door, then you are increasing their chances of being reincarcerated back in the system. And another thing, Dr. Haney, I hate to switch gears, but it's another thing that's on me, and that is the parole system that's in place now, and some of the criteria that they use to determine whether or not an individual will be paroled back into society. I mean, you got a situation where you take an individual, and I know one guy personally, I met the parole board with a guy named Reginald Williams. Met the parole board with him, man, this guy, man, he's on work release, he's working. I mean, he's in position himself to be able to, in the process of going into business for himself. He's gone through the cosmetology school, he's a licensed professional barber. As a matter of fact, he's my personal barber. And he's completed all the program. We started an organization at one time behind the wall, behind the fences at River Bend. And he had completed that particular program and some other programs, got his GED. And when he goes to parole board, the hearing officer recommends him for parole. But when he gets his votes back, then they put him off for another 2 years. And that's ridiculous. I mean, what is it that you want a person to do before you let him out? And the reason for that was seriousness of the offense. Now, Dr. Haney, here it is, 10, 11, 12 years has passed since the offense occurred. Now, of course, the offense was serious enough to get him incarcerated. And I don't care 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, it's going to still be serious.
Same serious offense.
So, what's the rationale behind that? You know, the person is definitely somebody that's ready for society, has proven himself ready for society, but yet we're not allowing them to come back into society. And the signal needs to be changed. You know, we take the individual, we follow them from the crime scene through the courtroom scene, all the way through to the gates of the prison system, and then from there we drop them off. Nobody is interested in the individual that gets in the system, develops himself while in the system, has made a determination to be someone other than they were when they went in. Nobody cares about that individual. We happen to care. You know, I know, Dr. Haney, I've been there myself. I spent time in the prison system. I spent 17 years a drug addict in my life. And I know how it is to face all these different challenges and frustrations in life. People don't realize when you're incarcerated, you don't have the luxury that, and it's a luxury. You don't have the luxury of walking up and down the aisles of Kroger and shopping. You don't get that. And so you got people that's been incarcerated 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and I've known them to do that and get out. Then they got to come back in and they got to make this transition back into society. So my thing is, why put added frustration on the individual that already has enough frustration lying ahead of them, and no matter how much knowledge they've gained while incarcerated, they still got to come out and learn how to put that knowledge into practice in a whole different setting. Because one thing happens when you get out of prison, and I know this from experience, life speeds up. Prison life is a tough life, it's a terrible life, but it's at a slower pace. When you get out of prison, you get in the mainstream of society, life accelerates.
You're literally in the mainstream.
Yeah, you're there. Yeah, you're there, and it accelerates, and then you're trying to figure out, and then you got this frustration of knowing that I've developed all these things, I got these job skills, I've got this commercial cleaning certificates, and all these things, I've learned some computer stuff, but when I go out to get the job, I finally do get to the table and I sit down at the interview, and then they tell me, well, you know, you got all the qualifications, you're a great guy, I love your personality, I believe you will be good for the company, but our policy won't allow us to hire you because you're an ex-offender. I mean, who gives these people the chances? You know, and I can say we because I'm one of those people that has been incarcerated, that is an ex-offender, you know, and I'm proof positive that we do change. But who's the individual? Who's the company owner? Who's the individual that gives these individuals the chance when they come out to prove that they are changed people and that they can fit into our society?
In other words, there is no rehabilitation effort, any rehabilitation belief under that kind of system. Is that what we're saying?
The current system that we have in place under Quentin White, I think they're doing more things now toward programs.
Okay, and of course, let me take this break, and we'll be back following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome to this final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Kevin Walker, and the issue is the reentry of individuals who have been incarcerated into a free society. And of course, Reverend Walker, over the last this last segment, let's give you an opportunity to expand upon some of the things that you're telling us, that in reality you're enlightening us in reference to what is going on, in reference to ex-offenders who are coming back into society. Let's continue that.
Okay. As I was saying before the break, Commissioner White, Quentin White, he has really put some focus on reentry programs. He's really trying to look in that area because something has to be done to break the recidivism rate. Now, and it not only starts with the reentry program, but it should back up with the parole board. You know, when you, again, once you got an individual that has proven themselves worthy of release, and then you got a parole board that's sitting there and they're basically retrying the case. I said at one hearing at one time, and I saw a parole board member actually recommend that an individual be put off for 20 years. I mean, that's a brand new sentence that can only be handed down by the court. You know, of course it didn't stand, but just to even recommend that, I mean, that's just, to me, Dr. Haynes, that's just pure foolishness, and it just don't make any kind of sense whatsoever. That's another system that I think that really needs to be looked at. Now, I'm not saying open the floodgates and let everybody out, because there's some people in prison that need to be in prison that don't need to get out of prison. You know, when I went to prison, I needed to be there for the time that I was there because I was a criminal and my mind was set on committing crimes. And that leads to another issue as well. You take an individual, and a lot of people don't realize, and this is concerning the rights, your civil rights, your rights as a citizen of the state of Tennessee of the United States of America, in voting, in terms of voting and stuff. It's so messed up there. So many, the way they got it broke down. This person can't vote. This one can. This one won't ever be able to vote. But in essence, when you commit a crime in the state of Tennessee or in the United States of America, or let me narrow it down to the state of Tennessee. When you commit a crime in the state of Tennessee, you can go commit a crime. You may go and do 3 years. You may do 5 years. You may do 1 year. A felony conviction. But in essence, what you have in your possession is a life sentence, because for the rest of your life, and they don't want you to vote, you know, you don't have the rights of a citizen, truly rights of a citizen of this country. You know, my thing is, if you don't want me to vote, you know, and all that stuff, then I don't see why I should have to pay taxes either. Why not? Don't press me about paying income tax and stuff. If I don't have a right to vote, you know, let's do the whole ball of wax if we're gonna do any parts of it. You know, and I think that's a big issue as well. But we have structured programs through the Hands of God Recovery Ministries, and we are on the approved list of they call them halfway houses, we call them recovery houses. People coming out of Tennessee Department of Correction, and our programs are structured and they're designed to help individuals make that transition back into society. We want to take the individuals as they come out and then basically show them the love of God. You know, show them that, first of all, God has forgiven you for whatever it is that you did. We're not concerned about that, you know. We want to know what you did. Of course we want to know your crime, but we're not concerned about your crime because God has forgiven you. Now what we want to do is be a servant to you and help you to make that transition.
Make that transition back into society.
Help you to get the job, help you to mend the relationships that you had that maybe you have destroyed with your loved one as a result of your drug addiction or your incarceration or whatever it is that caused you to be incarcerated. And help you to mend those relationships, help you to get gainfully employed, and help you to become responsible, paying your bills, you know, contributing to this tax system that I don't believe I should have to pay anyway. But you know, to help a person in that progress, that's what we're all about, because there's a big need, and if people got to realize, when people in the prison system, they got sentences that have parole dates or expiration dates, they're going to either parole out or they're going to either expire their sentences. It's up to us that are out here in so-called free world society to make a determination right now as to how much help can we give these individuals, because one day they might be your neighbor.
Well, why don't you speak to, over the last 5 or 6 minutes that we have, why don't you speak to this issue of employers, individuals? I mean, you know, we give lip service to the fact that we are equal opportunity employers and et cetera, et cetera. But as you indicated earlier, when an individual comes and who has done any kind of time in a correctional institution, for all practical purposes, they might as well ought not to apply.
That's true.
Even though owners give what? Lip service. Speak to that. I mean, how
like you say, Dr. Haney, they say we're equal opportunity employer. But then what about the guy with the skills, or even the guy that don't have the skills but have the family? You know, here's a guy that's been incarcerated 5 years or so. He gets out and he comes back. His family is waiting for him. He's got the wife. He's got 2 or 3 children. They would love to eat food too. You know, they like to eat, you know. They would love to go to the movies. They would love to be able to ride around their own automobile, live in their own houses and stuff like that. But we all know that it takes money to do these type of things. Now, if I go and present myself, and if I go and present my best self to an employer, and then he looks at me and he knows that I'm qualified to do the job. He knows that his instinct tells him that this guy will make a great employee, but yet, because of our policy, we're equal opportunity employer, but our policy said we can employ you. Where's the equal? I mean, what's equal about that? You know, I don't understand that. You know, these people need an opportunity, you know, just like everybody else needs an opportunity. The guy coming out of college has spent 4 years in college, 6 years in college, what have you, coming out of college, knocking on the door with a resume in hand, needing a job, they need a job. The people coming out of the prison system is not unlike that individual. They need a job as well. if you don't help me to progress in life, then don't criticize me when I fail because of a system you got in place that's really designed to see me fail.
Well, now, are there jobs that the state itself have that individuals that since the state is an employer?
God, help me on that one.
You see?
Yeah.
Now, are there jobs that the state could identify and say that when we release an individual, that these are the jobs that we in the state have available that these individuals could possibly apply for, and et cetera?
Dr. Henders, the thing is this: you got people in state custody are working for the state. But when you get released from state custody, you're not qualified to work for the state. You know, come on, man. You can't get a state ID. You've been in state custody for 20 years. You get out, you can't have a state ID. You had one for 20 years, we're taking it back. You've been working a state job for the last 20 years. You've been doing great at it. You know, we appreciate it.
And the same job that you've been working at, you've been so great, we can't fool even though the money that we might be paying you for doing that job is more than the money, is less than the money that we had to pay while we were keeping you incarcerated to do the same job.
You know, the thing is, my point is this: if I'm qualified to do the job, I'm qualified to do the job. If I can do it inside, I should be qualified to do it outside. I mean, you got people in there doing clerical work and stuff like that. They're working with the chaplains. I mean, I know some guys at River Bend. They do the bulk of the work. They make it flow. You know, chaplains got it going on. You know what I'm saying? And that's a good thing. But now you take that same individual, get out, and then the state won't employ that individual. But why not? They didn't employ them all these years. You know, only difference there will be a difference in the rate of pay. The individual is the same individual. He's the same person you praise on the inside when he got it done. I mean, why not give him a chance to do the same thing when they get out?
And he's out of the system itself, and so that really does not cost the state anything. And the very money it might be saving, it could possibly hire that individual.
Well,
it's a win-win kind of situation.
It's a win-win situation, and I think some minds need to get together and start thinking about, start looking at what the vehicle we got in place and see why. You know, I mean, you just can't place the fault of the recidivism rate on the individual, the inmates that's going out committing the crimes, going back. It's a deeper look than that. You got to look at some of these systems that are in place that are by design to elevate this recidivism rate. Because if you move some of these stumbling blocks out of the way, people won't stumble. If you got something out there in front of me that I'm going to stumble over, then I'll stumble.
And identification, you believe, is a stumbling block.
It's a great stumbling block, Dr. Haney, and it really needs to be fixed. That needs to be fixed. People need to have the right to vote. The parole system needs to be fixed. That old seriousness of offense is a catch-all phrase that's designed to keep folks incarcerated that they know will be productive in society, but they just don't want to let them out.
And the great number of individuals that we have incarcerated all across the nation and et cetera can be assisted and be very, very helpful and useful kind of individuals.
Absolutely.
If we were to look at this from a different perspective.
If we looked at it from a different perspective and we respect the fact that these people, these are human beings, they have minds, they have intellects, they have intelligence just like we have, and they deserve the opportunity just like we have right here to prosper, take care of our families, to contribute to church fundings and anything else, nonprofit organizations, do anything else. They have the same right, and they should be afforded that right. And a system that are in place that are designed to impede people should be broken up and moved out of the way so people can enter back into society and be productive members of society. And those people that don't have the right mindset, we need to get them out of those places because they're the barriers. It's not the inmate all the time that's the barrier. It's the people operating the system in a lot of situations.
Very good. And of course, Reverend Walker, let me, we've come to the end of the show for today, but let me thank you for coming by. Let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.